regarding negotiating royalties, is that in principle, if I pay for some work to do, then I would assume I own all the rights to that. So then, if it's part funded, then that's when you get into the negotiations, I presume. And kind of the second part of that question is, at the beginning, it's impossible to know how much this product is going to make, because any new product is going to have risk associated with it. So how do you deal with all those unknowns when you're doing that negotiation?
It's an interesting thing, because we have negotiation all the time with people around about IP. And I have to say that most inventors think that they've come up with the next Google straight away, and they tend to put telephone number valuations on it. What we do is we do negotiation up front. We don't like to pay people up front. We pay by success. So a royalty is a fantastic way of paying by success. The more you sell, the more you get. We have to put estimates, guesstimates even, on the basis of unit sales. But in the review clause, you're not going to get the universities being unreasonable if you don't meet a certain criteria, because it didn't work out unless you've been doing something pretty bad. But in negotiating royalties, I like doing that, and you'll find that most of the commercial people who do negotiate with colleges, that in most cases they find it reasonable that colleges aren't all about trying to get money up front and get the first million. In fact, I'd have to say in our collaborations, it's worked out better. The biggest problem I have is when I'm dealing with individual entrepreneurs, because expectations there tend to be crazy. But colleges and Clarity and Nova, they've done this before, so I find it pretty okay.
Perhaps I just add something to that. The real question was, if you paid for something, should you own it? And I think the short answer is, if you pay the full cost, probably you should. The reality in this country is that there are incredible state incentives for individuals and companies to collaborate with universities, paying only a very small fraction of what the product development or the research is costing. So against that background, you get to get usually an exclusive license with a very modest royalty, reflecting the additional risk that really has to be invested to take any concept through the product. Clearly, there are circumstances when universities, or indeed private inventors, bring their own pre-existing, we call it background intellectual property to the project, and there has to be fair compensation for that. So that's never handed over to somebody unless there is a fair value attributed to it at full market rates. So it's a negotiation. I think universities are pragmatic, but where there is a bottom line and a line in the sand is that we do occasionally, and thankfully very seldom, get some individuals demanding complete ownership, having put up perhaps 5% or 10% of the incremental cost of doing something, and that's just not happening.
So you mentioned the review clause there. Is that a review that you as the licensee are allowed to review the royalty rates, or the licensor or all ever allowed?
Both parties are involved in the review. It's to protect both parties, and it's written in the legal document at the start. So every 2 years you review it, and we don't review the success for us. It's a review of the success of the partnership.
But it changes the rate. The rate could change. The royalty rate could change. I know it could be confidential.
Well, it could, yes. I think it's very unlikely the rate of the royalty will change, because we've got that in pretty much written in stone at the start. It's generally reviewing whether you're doing what you said in terms of volume sales and whether they're making sufficient money out of the process.
I understand. So that's what we would call, I'm from Trinity, so we call it a performance clause. We do like to put in something. The worst case scenario for us is that somebody just sits on it.
Yes.
That they just put it on the shelf for anti-competitive reasons. So we do like to put in something to prevent somebody doing
that's essentially what it's about, because you can have a blocking agreement. You just want to keep something off the market. But that's why you have to review, yeah.
John?
One of the presenters mentioned how handy it would be if there was a database of research projects, so that people who had an idea perhaps could see who was working in this area. And I've often thought that seemed a very logical idea to me. I'm wondering why has that happened? And maybe I haven't heard about it. Is there a database of research that's going on in Irish programming institutes? And if not, are there sort of institutional blockages to that being developed, or is it just that somebody hasn't got around to it yet?
Just I'll answer first. Just on ICIN, we're trying to put together a database of all the software and ICT research. Just basically a very simple one, mainly from a company point of view. That if a company wants to find out who's working in cloud computing or data mining or something like that, it's free for everybody on the ICIN website. But it's ongoing. We're working with the TTOs to try and keep that up. But I think maybe from the academic side,
I'll take just my experience on it again. So there's just one example. The Enterprise Ireland run a business partner scheme, and what that really was to send very successful entrepreneurs to come in and look at university technologies with the intent of finding out whether there's a market for it and hopefully spin out a company. As part of that process, each of the universities inventoried some of the assets that they felt were nearest to market, put it together in a database, which I thought was very effective, and they had a template for it. What I found quite interesting was the feedback was, this is an overwhelming list of stuff, and it's really hard to prioritise what's the good stuff and what's the bad stuff. So it's ironic, in trying to solve the problem that was asked for, you get a complaint that, hey, you're making it even more complicated again. So what I can say is, locally, what I decided to do was put a set of slides together, categorised by the areas, and very simple descriptions of what I think the expertise within the university is. So you might have to do that multiple times, but if you're in Dublin, you might have a predisposition for Dublin institutions, so you might have 3 or 4 to go around. So it's a step towards that direction, but I think if you spend an hour with looking through the website in any of the colleges, you'll find out very quickly what's going on. And the other thing is, there is natural overlap. It's like Venn diagrams. So we'll have some degree of expertise that you could probably claim is similar to what's in Trinity. You really need to have a discussion. So it's a tough problem, but I think each institution tries to address it, and when we've done it pretty well.
I think there have been some attempts at this, and it is very difficult. I think it was Expertise Ireland was one, and the universities themselves will often have a database of the research activities. One of the problems is very simply a vocabulary problem. Even if you go and enumerate all the research areas, the manner in which they're described from the university's point of view will often be very different from what the industry is looking for. Sites like Nova and Invent are definitely a good first port of call. The large research centres now that SFI have set up, such as Clarity and CNGL and Derry, are another good example, at least in terms of the number of places you have to go. There are fewer, and it's particularly useful that those centres often have their own industry liaisons or commercialisation officers.
Just to, maybe before you move off that one of the problems with databases is they go out of date, and I think that's what finally finished for Expertise Island. We came up with the idea earlier this year that there's some very interesting new techniques for searching the web, and I wouldn't hesitate to go into detail with Barry at the other end of the table. But we made a proposition that it would be interesting, rather than to have a database, but to have a search engine which you could type in a relatively free text sort of inquiry and would go and crawl all over the various university websites and so on, and come back and tell you what it is. Unfortunately, if you're in the public sector and you want to get any software developed, you have to get the permission of one individual in the Department of Finance. Right. So I won't tell you how far that project. You'll have to guess how far that project has gone.
But I mean, the people in there are working in that area, for instance.
Yes.
Yeah.
It strikes me that as a project for them, they don't need to refer to the person.
All right. Anyway, whatever. But I think it's an interesting approach because it's built on what already exists.
Can I just make a quick comment on that? John, one of the problems is that there's no national database. I find that I've had to go over the last year out, meet the various people and develop ourselves an understanding of where the specialism is within the country. I think the recent collaboration initiatives that are happening between the Invent, the Nova, are beginning to reduce the amount of places you have to go to find out the information, but there still isn't a national database. Mainly because I think, and I'm not so sure this will change, there's a department of chemistry in all the universities in the country. There's a department of botany in all education locations, and the IoTs, there's replication of what they do because they have a fundamental education mandate as well. So they have to have those. So there's a little bit of replication, duplication of effort going on.
Just one, I was in, maybe there's somebody here from NUIG, but I was in NUIG last week, and there's an interesting collaborative program there. I think it's called Metric, where for the medical device industry, Limerick, Galway, Sligo, Athlone, they are now setting up a one-stop shop for the medical device industry to come, and they can get, they will be pointed in the right direction. So I think there's an interesting model there that it might be sectoral or whatever, but if you could go improve it, you go to one place and say, well, it's corporate having or whatever. That's an interesting.
So a quick comment on the database problem. I know EIN have put some work into this particular problem, and they've got a database of all the research expertise of their funded researchers called researchers.ie, and the idea is that they get all their researchers to make a LinkedIn profile, and then they extract the data from that. I do know that the long-term goal was to expand it so it wasn't just limited to EIN funded researchers.
Okay.
And just for Hugh, in Bordeaux, is there a formal innovation process within the organisation? Is there a dedicated innovation role right down to those staff levels? Is there an innovation process?
Yeah. We have an accredited system, ISO 9000 accredited, divided into 3 stages: ideation, coming up with the ideas; prioritization, scoring the ideas that are good and bad; and then it's on to stage gate that somebody else spoke about earlier. But yeah, there's a formal process. I don't believe that innovation just happens, it has to be managed. You're a little bit less formal when you go about your ideation because you don't want to go throwing out all sorts of ideas. You're much more formal when you get into stage gate. And through the stages, there are 5 stages in our process, from the stage 1, which is what we call a quick look, to stage 5, which is called market launch. The whole idea, philosophy of stage gate is you don't spend too much money before you realise that something is a dud. So yes, we have a formal process.
Yeah, Victor Brannigan from Sustained, and we do education for sustainability. I was wondering about the soft skill of collaboration, because it seems to be sort of counterintuitive maybe to a lot of entrepreneurs, particularly trying to protect interests, and about what might be done, and is anything being done in these centres around that's Benny calls it the supercomputer between our ears, which is hardwired to the me space, and collaboration is very much about developing a we space, and what, if anything, has been done through the various programs for working with individuals of letting something go to get it back, like collaboration skill.
I might just take that point. I think it's a very important point, and I think what's interesting, if you look at the Science Foundation Ireland budget for these very large-scale research centres, far more money is spent on those soft metrics such as knowledge transfer, disseminating, making connections, ensuring that people know what's going on. About 5% of the budget for any CITA is for communicating capability, communicating innovative possibilities, and less than 1% actually is spent on formal intellectual property, and I think that's right. I think the balance perhaps might be addressed somewhat, but nonetheless, there's a huge amount of effort put in. It can be a lot more effective, I think, at ensuring that not so much projects get spoken about, but that relationships are built, and that new possibilities, and Barry spoke about this earlier, when people start collaborating, either industrialists or entrepreneurs in universities, all sorts of strange and wonderful things happen. And the issue is about that dialogue rather than the intellectual property. And how to improve that is a challenge for everybody. Maybe we need to innovate in some way that we haven't yet stumbled upon.
Yeah, I think nothing beats coming in the door into one of these centres and having a chat, and people are often surprised at quite how open these centres are for that sort of first meeting. You know, and researchers are collaborative at heart. They're used to sharing their ideas at conferences and with colleagues, so it's a natural part of what they do. And once entrepreneurs and business owners come in, they realise that their interests can be protected, but at the same time they can extract value from these collaborations.
Yeah, because we see it as specific skill collaboration needed for the future. And I could make a shameless plug for having a day on collaboration with intention next Tuesday around developing that skill in a co-working space. And here in Dublin, people are talking about that.
I think the forum that you have today is an excellent forum because I think the sectoral approach is what's required within the innovation space because, you know, the feedback that we get all the time is that the industry is saying, we don't know what's happening out there with regards to the institutes, we don't know how relevant it is to us, and we don't know what support mechanisms are actually there as well, you know. So like a forum like this rolled across all different sectors, I think is the best way to actually get the industry involved in what's happening, you know. So I think, you know, congratulate you today for the, you know, for the plan you put together and for the way that it's actually been rolled out as well, you know. So this could be a role model right across all the sectors.
Colin McAtee, New York. I have a question. We haven't worked with any colleges yet. One of the areas we're interested in is actually we've got ideas we bring them to the college. We don't have competitors yet. But we're doing engagement research. How is that protected? Anyway.
Speaking for DCU, I mean, we treat that really seriously. We give a great deal of respect to anybody, whether he is a lone entrepreneur who's only thinking about starting a company or just has an idea. And we give it the same respect that we give to a multinational company. We attempt to sign an agreement that protects not our interests, but the interests of the individual coming to us with the idea, because mostly what we have is capability and a willingness to want to work with somebody. Frequently we don't have an awful lot of really relevant formal intellectual property like patents, so the entrepreneur or the individual holds the ace cards. If they're coming with a market opportunity, it's up to us to respect that. And we do, and I know UCD and NUIG and Trinity all do the same. They treat that seriously. And we put in place a simple non-disclosure confidentiality agreement that allows the individual to sue the hell out of us if we break your confidential rights.
Just on that, do you actually have how is that enforced? So do you have any metrics or measures to make sure it doesn't?
The problem, man, is not unique to universities. The problem with non-disclosure agreements or confidentiality agreements is ultimately it is about trust. You can sign as many agreements as you like. The question is, what are they worth? And that's where the process of beginning to work with the university, or indeed another company or a competitor, is a slow, step-by-step, cautious one. You've got to begin to trust people. And there's no short way around that. There's no quick solution to that problem.
I'd agree. NDAs really aren't worth the paper they're written on if there isn't the trust. So we certainly put NDAs, two-ways NDAs in place between ourselves and the third level colleges. And the next thing we do is when things progress a little bit more, we sign an MOU, a Memorandum of Understanding. And the last thing we do is a heads of terms or a licensing agreement. So it's a sort of a developing legal process, but the trust has to be there from the start. And I think everybody needs to realise that a fantastic idea with no market is useless, but a great market opportunity with a useless product is equally useless.
Okay, thank you very much for the call out there. All the various colleges are over here now, and I would encourage you to go over and have a chat with them.
Sorry, Mother, can I just make one point? A few of the speakers spoke about the innovation partnerships and the innovation vouchers. It might be worth stressing that they're not initiatives that are only open to clients of Enterprise Ireland. They're open to anybody that wants to go onto the website And a lot of the supports all of the supports that Enterprise Ireland has in the innovation space are free and open to anyone. So 727-2000 is the main switchboard number. There's the website, and we have a section with a team of individuals that can come out. If you're not born with the idea, this idea of borrowing, we've got access to a whole European enterprise network. There's a team within Martin's division that looks after that. There's a technology transfer team. So anybody that might be here that's interested in anything in that space, if you want to contact Dennis, Michael or Suzanne's, they'll put you on to us or the relevant person in Enterprise Ireland through us. So you don't have to go around all the colleges or around 50 departments of Enterprise Ireland. One call to one of us and we'll get the information and the right person for you.
Okay, thanks, Patty. Okay, I'd like to just close it all up now, and thank you very much everybody for coming along. As we said in the introduction, the 3 EIN networks are available to help companies. That's what we're here for, funded by Enterprise Ireland, so I would encourage you to make use of that, particularly somebody who wants to engage with academia. We can be a first step to identify relevant partners or suitable partners for you. So I encourage you to contact the 3 of us. We'll be here after this, so we'll be around for a while. So thank you very much again.